Alright, we are recording, and I just finished chapter 1 of that. The Star Wars Trilogy, so this would be chapter 1 of A New Hope as well. Which, for referencing the movie, goes from the beginning of the movie until, about the, landing of the escape pod on Tatooine. And it's definitely interesting reading because it makes me wonder when the novel was written relative to the movie, because there are certain things that are wrong for what we know from the movie. For example, a description of R2-D2 as having clawed legs as opposed to the wheels. I wonder if that's something that, like in Empire Strikes Back, if that description will be maintained, like, so consistency within the novels, or if it will be now we made the movie and it was different, so we're going to make it different in the books now. Don't know. But it could also be, like, more so the intended vision, depending on when this was relative to the movie. Like, if the novelization was before the movie, before production started, then it's like, no, that's just what the idea was, but it wasn't practical. Could be the explanation, so we got the design that we all know. But if it was more contemporary with the movie, or even after the movie, I doubt it would be after. More likely contemporary. If it were not before. Let me be clear on that. If it were not before. Just because I forgot to put the pin on. So I'll just hold it for now. That might then be that's how George Lucas initially intended R2 to appear. Interesting kind of thing there. Let me see. Yeah, it's still weird, and I mentioned this in the other one. It's still weird seeing R2-D2 and C-3PO written out instead of the like designations. That's the word that I wanted to use before, designation. Oh yeah, I completely forgot that. I'm skipping in my notes a little bit. And I think I may have started saying a very interesting description of Tatooine that is nonsense. It's utter nonsense, but it's still very interesting. That initially, when the planet was found, and one thing that is a little unclear, hopefully I'll come back to that. But when it was initially found, it was thought it was another sun, another star in the system, which we already know there's the 2 stars, but initially people were thinking that there's a third. Because of how much light was reflecting off of its sodium-like surface. I don't remember the exact wording of it, but sodium was definitely in there. But basically that because it was reflecting so much light and would be tinted yellow, people thought it was in fact a star. This is utter nonsense because planet, star. You don't confuse those. Especially not one that would be terrestrial. I'm trying to remember what the largest super Earth is, but it's still, I'm saying even Jupiter, which is dwarfed by the sun, it is far larger than even the largest terrestrial planet. You're not confusing those. And it's also, planets don't emit light. Yeah. But for being descriptive, it definitely is, because it sets up, and they do continue to reference it a little bit. It does set up both that it is very bright there because of the binary stars, but also how hot it is, because that is exactly what we know Tatooine for being incredibly hot and bright. Which I kind of wonder then if there's going to be anything like Luke's eyes having to adjust later on, because he's so used to very bright light. But like once he's on the Millennium Falcon, you'd think that would be at levels of brightness Han is used to. And where's he from? Not necessarily from Tatooine, or anywhere that would have comparable levels of light. So that could be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if that isn't in there, but it's still an interesting thought to have, and I'm having it. I'll skip that for... Oh, wait, what was it? There was something else I wanted to mention. Oh, that's right. One thing that I'm curious about, and I either have to like reread the line a few times and try to figure out what they mean by it, or just continue reading. And it is something that I think exists in a fair amount of science fiction. That basically humans exist everywhere. As opposed to, no, humans came from Earth and had to go other places. Because it does describe how Tatooine was still far enough away that it would be that would be cool enough for life to form, including humans. And it's like, are we? This is, my opinion. Is that the whole idea here is my opinion, my criticisms. I personally, I would never. I don't like that idea that humans would just spontaneously evolve, spontaneously develop on multiple planets. I don't see why. I mean, if you believe in evolution, I don't think anyone would think that the circumstances would be so close that you'd get humans on multiple planets. That's one. And two, if you don't believe in that, if you do believe in a creator, you really think that such a creator is going to be so limited in imagination that he's going to copy and paste the most intelligent life form on the planet? I mean, granted, we're the only super intelligent life form on this planet, but still, we got some weird things. I mean, we got the platypus, for crying out loud. I mean, why couldn't they just be super intelligent platypuses? Even that I'd find more reasonable out there than, because at least that's a weird one. I mean, clearly some imagination went into that thing, but anyway, yeah, so that would be, I'm trying to defend it, that this is opinion and criticism, not just me talking about what's in there. I am trying to do I would not write that kind of way. Although I do like how Asimov did it in some of his stuff. I can explain that in a moment. But no, it is canonical for the Catherineverse, and no other super intelligent life has been found. There's some more to that, but that's for a future story, so I'm not going to talk about it here. But it is canonical that basically humans are the only super intelligent life found. And in fact, I don't even think I've decided. Well, I know I haven't decided on if there's anything even clearly reminiscent of mammal life forms on other planets. Fish, I think I can tolerate the idea of being there because they would have developed fairly early on Earth. But it would be other lower life forms than that you'd have any chance of finding. So anyway, what was the next point there? So that, just going back, it is a criticism that I would have for it. Not really positive or negative. It's more just I know that is something I would choose to avoid when writing such a story. Oh yeah, Asimov. So if you read The Stars Like Dust, which of the 5 books I have, that is probably my second favorite. End of Eternity is my favorite. But in The Stars Like Dust, which I think that's supposed to be the first book of the Galactic Empire series. Sorry, I turn over this way because that's what the book is. And it's just like from memory. I don't remember which series it is, but it's basically made reference to that humans have left Earth, but did so long ago that basically all the planetary colonies that now have their own histories have forgotten that they originated on Earth and just think that, oh yes, humans did develop everywhere. Which is definitely an interesting concept. He also depicts in The Stars Like Dust that Earth has been so ravaged, so destroyed, that it's seen as a backwater compared to everywhere else. Sort of like a, I don't know of actually any good examples in the world, but the idea being like, if you have a well-developed urban environment that simply through time ceases to be maintained, and so it falls apart, whereas there's new cities elsewhere that are maintained and are in the latest and greatest, and so stand out better. That doesn't seem to be very common for the cities I can think of, but yeah, I guess it would be like if you, instead of having New York enjoying 100 years of development since 1924, they just decided, now we're going to build a new city like 100 miles away, and make that one the really fancy and new one. It would be almost like that, and then the old New York just fall apart. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I want to skip that for the moment. Yeah, let's get to these 2 points. One that is actually very interesting. Because I don't know. This is probably a setup, and it's not going to be a big payoff probably, but it still could be very interesting. That in the hallway fight scene where C-3PO and R2-D2 just go across the hall and get missed. Yes, they still are being missed in this, but a shot to a wall causes 3PO to fall back, and he's now like in a bunch of wires, and they're short-circuiting across him, so he's actually getting really, really confused. It even says he's not experiencing pain, he's experiencing confusion, because every time he tries to move, something new is shorting out over him. R2 does cut away all the cables, but then goes off. And it's when he goes off that's when Leia is there, giving him the message. So 3PO comes over, and then kind of like in the film, you do see, he's observing Leia doing this. But in the book, it says he thinks he's hallucinating. That can actually happen with droids. That can happen with robots where they can hallucinate things. But it even says, normally, like, I wouldn't be hallucinating a human. Why would I be doing that? But it's so crazy right now. And I was just short-circuiting, so maybe so hallucinating a human, I guess that's possible, but I'm not going to mention it to R2. I don't need him thinking that I was messed up by that, because that's how 3PO is. He has to be superior. It actually is quite amusing, and it's also one of those things, I'm reading, and it's like, I don't quite hear 3PO's voice, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the actor's name at the moment. I don't feel like looking it up. I don't quite hear the voice, because some stuff is the same, but some of it is just different enough. Like a bit more talking, a bit, different kind of word choices, but it's like, yeah, that's 3PO's personality. Exactly for what we know from the movies, I should say. Yeah, but it is just interesting because eventually this is clearly a setup, and it should get a payoff of 3PO being like, oh, I didn't hallucinate? I mean, it would probably be internal. He probably wouldn't say anything, because then R2 would then know that he had that doubt. And so he's not going to do that, but it's still, with 3PO currently being closer to being the narrator, closer to being the protagonist that we're following, it is moving around some. We'd probably get that internal thought from him. So that'll be interesting, especially for when it may occur, which might be either at the homestead when Luke is cleaning and then first discovers part of the message, or later when at Kenobi's place, if it follows what is in what we all know from the movies. Another thing, I definitely am liking the scene description that's being done there, which part of the reason why I'm going to like that is that's something I am poor at, and I have been for a long time. I want to get better, and honestly, I do believe by reading stories that do it better than me, authors that do it better than me, that does help me improve. So yeah, but one thing I do like is, while it is definitely quite good at this description, and can spend a fair amount of time on it, it hasn't felt esoteric to me, at least not yet. It's only chapter 1. Because that is one thing that I have seen with, I'm just trying to think what would be a good book to reference, but none are immediately coming to mind, at least for clear examples. But sometimes they can get very esoteric, and just using all this different language where it's like, why do I feel like I need to pull out a dictionary? I mean, it's like the description of Tatooine, that does actually take like a full paragraph, but it's like, it's actually pretty clear and direct. As I said, it's nonsense, because you wouldn't confuse a planet with a star under any circumstances. I mean, maybe like brown dwarf kind of stuff, but even then, that's more of a, well, we're not sure if it is a star or a planet. It's kind of too much in the middle. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that. But yeah, so it's like, that is something I like, and it did not feel esoteric to me. But yeah, so one thing that I actually had to write out the quote in my notes, and I have it here, and then I rewrote it here. Fear followed the footsteps of all dark lords. And I actually might just realize I may have that wrong. It might be follows instead of followed, but the book's back there. I kind of want to grab it and check, but regardless. What I find interesting about this is like the sentence or two after introducing Darth Vader. My speech impediment is starting to come out. Darth Vader and him being a Dark Lord of the Sith. Now, here's why I find this interesting, and this is something that, if you read the book in a vacuum, probably never notice. But I've watched the movies plenty of times, including the prequel trilogy. So the idea of having any description for other Dark Lords, very curious, because, according to the prequels at least, there aren't any that anyone has known for 1,000 years. So, how is this a reference? How do people understand this? I mean, I get that it's dramatic. It's a good way of describing him, and that there are others. But it's like, okay, are we talking current others? I mean, it's like that's just a fascinating idea of what if there was more than just Vader out there. Um, it is an interesting idea. And it's also I'd put it in the same category of what I talked about in the prologue. How it was interesting that it's set up that Palpatine is being isolated, and it's people below him, advisors, governors, generals, and such, that are actually controlling things and are causing all this. So it is just interesting as another kind of change that we know, another thing that we know ends up being changed relative to certainly Empire Strikes Back for the Emperor. I'm just trying to think. Would it be Empire or Return of the Jedi that you would associate with the whole? No. It is just those two. I'm not entirely sure. But in any case, it is definitely interesting. I'm looking forward to reading more and seeing these other differences, and also what could have been. Because the idea of multiple Dark Lords is an interesting one, especially because I've not read any extended universe stuff. And yeah, I've also not played any that would have been contemporaneous with the original trilogy or after. Oh wait, no, I take that back. I did. Force Unleashed 1 and 2 I've played. Sorry, I'm just going a little bit off. But I have heard some things like stories from Extended Universe stuff, such as that after Return of the Jedi, because you did have Imperial governors, you did have Imperial generals, and you did have Imperial Navy forces throughout the galaxy, that they were resistant to the rebellion trying to form the New Republic. And would have been very interesting then if they kept there being multiple Dark Lords, and it's just Vader is one of them, because obviously he would be removed, Palpatine would have been removed at the end of Return of the Jedi. So would they have tried to lead a resistance to maintain the Empire, and also would they potentially have infighting to figure out, okay, who's going to be the new Emperor? It is a very fascinating idea. Obviously, never done because they changed things. But it is, that's getting into that criticism stuff that I was saying is part of the reason why I want to do this, is that thinking about this, because, well, yeah, and I actually should explain that a little bit more. I dislike fan fiction. I would dislike a fan fiction. I should try to explain this. And it's not, I mean, some of it is, there's some fanfic that's bad. Like, no sane person should read that, and how are you sane and wrote this kind of stuff? I'm saying that even aside. Like, I don't necessarily like fan fiction just because the idea of, if you are so good a writer, you should be able to, create your own story. You shouldn't have to create it in somebody else's universe. And I say that as a kind of encouragement that, don't bind yourself to somebody else like that. Though, of course, the extended universe of Star Wars, I mean, hey, if you got the opportunity to go in that and you had good stories, do it. But I guess then it's, it's not fan fiction anymore. It is, you're actually adding to the corpus. But it is melding that with how, these criticisms here and these thoughts, these ideas of potentially maybe I will do a story that such a concept as, what if there were the multiple Dark Lords that were more or less independent but now have to deal with the end of Return of the Jedi? That'd be interesting. I would not set such a story in the Star Wars universe. It's not my universe. I would be using my own, because that's what I think should be done when it's, you have an idea for a story. Don't base it in somebody else's universe. But hey, not me. I don't think I would touch Star Wars. I would potentially touch Star Trek if I was given the opportunity, though I don't think that would ever happen. I could probably turn it down anyway. But if I had the opportunity to write in somebody else's universe, it would be tempting. But no, for the most part, I want to tell my stories in my universes, kind of thing. And I encourage others to do the same, because, hey, if you're good, you can do it. And if you're not good, try anyway. I mean, you may find that you are good. Yeah, I'm probably stumbling a lot for my point there. I would also add this, though, as far as fan fiction goes. If it's a way to practice your skills, then absolutely do it. I just don't see it as the stories to put out. But that's me. And I'm probably an idiot. Well, I know I'm an idiot in many ways. Maybe I'm an idiot in that way, so whatever. But yeah, so chapter 2 will be next. I didn't really look ahead for what that's going to cover. There's only 13 chapters to A New Hope, so it's going to be going along kind of quickly. But then is also thinking through the movie. It is actually kind of a short movie in a way. I mean, I don't remember how short in time it is, but I mean as far as like true chapter point kind of events. So it will be interesting to go through. All right, that should be enough. I probably also put my foot deep enough in my mouth talking about the my view on fan fiction, but I mean it really does just boil down to what I was trying to say. If I'm going to try to recover from this at all, put it in your own universe. I mean, if you got this story, you love it, make it your own. Don't tie it to somebody else if you can't help it. Yeah, and I think that you can help it. I think that if you have what it takes to write any story, you can probably do it in your own original stuff. You don't need to be bound to something else. So, yeah, if you are working on a story, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and try at least. You may find it'll be easier than you thought. All right. See you next time.